Greetings to the 897 scholars here at Regent University. I wanted to do a quick kind of a supplementary slide for you. Many thanks to Michael Davis, who has had to put up with me deciding that I needed to research this single element of Turabian formatting specifically. Formatting issues are just a pain. I realize that they are, but it's also true that they are standard and essential when it comes to formal academic research and writing. So the way we cite ends up being hugely important. I'm aware of, even for my 899 students, that their dissertation is not going to pass muster in the end until all of these issues are correct. And so one of the things that I realized working together with Michael was that there is probably more than one acceptable format for citing scripture passages. And this is sometimes true with Turabian 9th edition because it allows for some flexibility and it allows for different faculty members to say, this is the way I want you to do that. So please don't be frustrated. Recognize that when you have an appointed chair, he or she will be able to say, this is how I would prefer you cite, whatever it is, some maybe internet source or whatever it might be, the scripture, because especially with the BTH foundations, and then of course with chapter 3, citing scripture passages is very, very important. So there are basically two options. Now, I want to tell you right away that either one is fine with me in 897. I am aware that Dr. Flynn in 700 presented one. This is it's kind of an older Turabian formatting guideline. And he presented it as the way to do in 700. And so you may remember it there, although there have been some changes. Some of you have been 2 or 3 years since you took 700, and there's some, there have been some changes as we have discussed in our Zoom meetings in the past. And then there is the more recent 9th edition way of doing it, which is actually it's simpler. Now, I like when Turabian tries to make things simpler. I like when the School of Divinity tries to make things simpler. The problem is we need to keep up with that. And not all of our faculty members are necessarily informed as to what they might be. Fortunately, I serve on the DMIN committee, so I usually am. But I just wanted to be able to do this for you so you can recognize, and it's not that complicated. It's just one of those things that it's good to kind of keep in mind. So there are two, and I'm going to give you these two options when it comes to citing scripture passages. The first one, and please notice that I always refer to Genesis as GEN. So you will always need to use the Turabian abbreviations for Bible books. And so if one slips by me when we're working together, it's going to come back around. So again, we're not looking for perfection with your proposal. Your dissertation will need to be perfect. So I think it's okay to kind of keep these ideas in mind. So always use the Turabian abbreviations for Bible books. And so the first option is the one that is taught in, at least when I was with Dr. Flynn, taught in 700. It would therefore reflect Dr. Flynn's probably preference. And it is an older kind of a standard. I appreciate that it's good, though. It's beneficial. Citations is always about helping people who are going to be reading your dissertation to be able to look up what you're referring to. And so this older style includes an in-text citation and a footnote citation. So it would be, for instance, as an example, if you are citing Genesis 1:26, you would begin by putting in just in the body of your work in parenthesis after quoting it, Gen 126 NIV. And you would indicate the translation only the first time you use it. Now, if you use more than one translation in your work, then you will need to indicate the translation you use every time. But for instance, here in this case, if you are only going to use the NIV, you will need to only indicate it once. And so that's kind of the difference, again, using the abbreviations for the Bible books. With this formatting style, the first time you quote a passage of scripture using a specific translation would also include a footnote. And this is the way Dr. Flynn, again, at least the last time I was with him in 700, taught it. So the first time would also include a footnote where you provide the bibliographic information for that translation. And again, you would only do it the first time. You don't do it again. So for instance, this is, footnote number 1, and you write it out now. Genesis 1:26, New International Version, Zondervan Publishing House, 1984. You would give the full bibliographic information. I think that's really, it's a more complete citation, probably with people who are not that familiar with Bible translations, with them in mind, in case they want to, okay, what is NIV, for crying out loud? So this enables them to do that. And if your additional footnotes are not necessary, if you use a second footnote, it's only because you are providing the bibliographic information for a second Bible translation. But again, if you are using the NIV, you only do it once. And so that's kind of the older style and involves a little bit more. And I think it is valuable. I think it's good. Now, again, be aware that you might have a chair that prefers this older style, and which is fine. It's not that difficult to provide. But once again, for 897, either one works fine. The second one is the most recent 9th edition guideline, and it involves only an in-text reference, and footnotes are never used. So it's simpler for that reason. So for instance, in this particular case, the first time you would cite the New International Version, you would have in parentheses, Gen 126, New International Version. And then every time you use the NIV after that, it is abbreviated, Gen 126 NIV. If more than one translation is used, if you're only going to use the New International Version, you just do that once. You provide the New International once the first time, and then after that, it's just Gen 126 because you're not switching to another translation. But it's only in text citation. A footnote is never used. So once again, you will always use Turabian abbreviations. This is the most recent, and I've unpacked it for Michael and gave him the the places in our Turabian Bible that I keep handy where it specifically addresses those. Please understand and remember that the scripture references are never in the bibliography for either one of these options. So this is just in-text citation. Sometimes if you're using that older form of footnote first time to give the bibliographic information for a translation, never in the bibliography. And so I just thought it would be helpful. I don't know that it is, but I recognize that some of these issues can be frustrating. So rather than being frustrated, I'd rather say, if you want to use the simpler, the current Turabian 9th edition, that's fine. That works for me. Be aware that you may have a chair that says, I would rather you use that older form that gives the bibliographic information. Now you know what it is. And so that way you'll be ready for anything. That's kind of my goal in 897 is to prepare you as well as I can to enter into 899 and begin to compose your dissertation. So just something extra for you, just to add, certainly not joy to your day, but hopefully some helpful clarification. along the way. And I may do that from time to time, just give you a supplementary attempt at explanation. So God bless you, everybody. Just have a great week.